Hello. I was hoping I could talk to you about some philosophical ideas that have been spinning in my mind. I've been mainly contemplating the question about how we find knowledge. Historically, there have been lots and lots of ways that this question can be answered, but I've been mainly looking at three viewpoints. One being Epicureanism, and then pragmatism, and then Neoplatonism. So I just want to kind of ramble on. First, start about how I think pragmatists find knowledge. Pragmatism was founded by a guy named Charles Sanders Peirce, and he contested that if everyone on Earth had an infinite time to argue and inquire things, then we would come to a true knowledge. But being mortal as you and I are, we can't exactly have that infinite time. So true knowledge can be found using all evidence that we have currently available to us. Um, Hence, unlike many philosophies, the purpose of life found in pragmatism is less about purely finding that perfect truth, but more finding the best truth that can be used using perfect evidence. Um, Pierce goes further to say that the way that we find knowledge is also completely based on how we interpret something. For example, we are able to perceive the practical world for what it is, but only if our reasons for perceiving something a particular way are true. However, this is not the only doctrine of pragmatism. Perhaps what pragmatism is most infamous for is its idea that if truth claims hold no practical value, meaning if our truth claims can't be used either mentally or physically for some kind of benefit, then our truth claims have no worth at all. Um, Although this does not rule out theism as an acceptable belief under pragmatism, as I kind of hinted at, as pragmatism is more about arguing that belief in God's existence can be rationally useful rather than outright arguing for God's existence, because that can't. No. I digress. With these arguments in mind, I've conjured up my own little analysis of them using the sevenfold criteria for evaluating truth claims. I think that the pragmatic argument holds up to a logical coherency test. As a pragmatist, one is able to look at everything that we already know and judge it off of just that, what we are seeing, what we know to be in front of us. Rather than speculating about useless claims about what we can't know, which eliminates any unharmonious conceptions. I also think that the argument has empirical adequacy. My reasoning is that there are plenty of theories in pragmatism that can be evidenced to be useful by way of physical testing. Pragmatic theory largely pertains to the present moment at hand. So our ability to gain usefulness through interaction with the physical world, or our ability to gain physical usefulness through interaction with metaphysical ideas, are all claims in pragmatism that are relevant, because these claims and pursuits can, or goals, I should say, can be immediately acted upon in life and absorbed into that person's being. Um, I also think that pragmatism holds some explanatory power, as it pulls together all explanations about practical ideas. However, it neglects to shed light on new discoveries that are found by way of non practical viewpoints. Finally, I think the pragmatic view upholds standards of practical information, but it degrades and even demeans viewpoints which don't share a commonality of practicality, which negatively affects its ethical and aesthetic excellence. Um, but I also want to talk about its workability and viability. Um, and I believe they can both be evidenced pretty hand in hand, because the purpose of pragmatic views is specifically to be able to use them to chase after pursuits and to generate practical benefits in a person's life. Um, so now bear with me, but I also want to discuss some of my findings on Epicurean ideas regarding how they find knowledge. Epicureans believe that our finding of knowledge comes from our sense perception only. The reason for this is that because our only direct senses are our only access to the physical world, our only foremost access to the physical world. Which and the reason And it will lead this perception of the physical world will lead to truth as long as one doesn't add any excess stimuli to what they perceive. Drugs, alcohol, emotions, all examples of stimuli which would severely alter somebody's physical senses. The Epicurean also makes sure to distinguish between the true and false perceptions of reality, one being the always true senses, and the other being easily foolable judgments. Epicureans reason that our senses are so flawless is due to their explanation of physics. They explain that all matter is made up of atoms that move on a strict path, only deviating slightly in order to create what can be found as chance in daily life. And because all matter is made up of atoms, including us, the material world is true and can only be perceived falsely through human error. Like I said, judgments, hasty judgments. So please allow me to critique this. First of all, I'd say that in a vacuum, the Epicurean worldview is logically consistent. If we are to believe that everything that exists only exists in our physical world and what we can see, then the matter that allows us to find knowledge, the atoms, has to be true. The atoms that make up that matter. Next, I think that there is empirical adequacy to the Epicurean viewpoint. Science does recognize the building block of nature, the atom as the building block of nature, and the deviating atoms creating chance is physically testable to occur in nature, as electrons in an atom can be known to deviate from their initial path and create consequences through its deviation. Epicureanism is existentially relevant to our life on earth as well, as it focuses purely in the here and now and explains our existence scientifically rather than divinely. Does the Epicurean viewpoint cash out beneficiently, though? I believe it does, and it can be a great tool to trust what you can see, but only after pondering but only after pondering what we see, and after that pondering, hopefully we can remove all reasonable doubt. Can a person live life through this use of thinking? I believe that they can. It focuses a person's efforts on believing what they see, and if they cannot believe what they see, then the next step is to examine it from different angles to find that objective truth in their or other people's perceptions. Also, I think that Epicureanism does a good job of explaining the world that we live in, but not much more than that, sadly. The theory of physics given by Epicureans is somewhat true, but it does not provide room for other explanations about the world through theism or ontology, because they believe that purpose is found in matter, and metaphysical ideas are not found in matter, so they're not useful to us. Lastly, Epicureanism does hold ethical and aesthetic excellence, as what can be seen directly to be beautiful and true to the senses is praised by Epicureans to be made up of the true purpose and backbone of life, which is matter, and that matter is what we can see. Finally, I'd like to talk to you briefly about Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism is an ancient philosophy popularized by Plotinus, who believed that all knowledge in the world can be found via a pervasive wisdom, which he calls the divine intellect. This divine intellect contains forms which order the universe, similar to what Plato believed, and these forms are located in a divine world. This divine world is or outside of the divine world, is where we exist, in the material world, where we can find evil, and that evil oftentimes deceives us. In this world, the perceptions that we make through our senses are deceiving, and true knowledge is found only when a philosopher overcomes the bondage of the physical world and moves as far as they can into the divine by use of moral and intellectual self-discipline. To judge this, I asked myself if this argument was logically coherent, and was surprised to find that it actually was. If the truth is found in a metaphysical realm only, then it is perfectly reasonable to believe that our realm of non-truth would be one filled with evil, which as humans, we already know that the world can be extremely evil. So this is consistent. In empirical evidence, however, Neoplatonism fails. No amount of physical testing will give evidence for any kind of divine or perfect realm. And we can't evidence the theory of forms in a lot of forms of nature. Neoplatonism succeeds, though, in being existentially relevant, as it gives meaning to what we can strive for currently and how our existence can be elevated through the divine realm. Although Neoplatonism again breaks apart when testing its workability, as all pursuits into a divine realm are not going to cash out in physical beneficial ways, but merely they will provide consoling for the wicked ways of the world. In contrast, Neoplatonism is livable, as it gives step instructions detailing how one can increase their connection with the divine and resist the temptations of the physical world. The theory's explanatory power also falls short, however, as a theory of higher forms cannot be evidenced in every single object, like I said earlier, it only shines new light on divine revelation and does not concern itself with discovering potential benefits of what can be found in the physical. Furthermore, I believe Neoplatonism degrades what is unique and good about the physical world, limiting the purpose of life to be only what can be evidenced in a divine realm, which we can't really see. My main takeaway from studying all of these ideas is that I haven't really been able to settle on an exact worldview. A lot of that can be due to insufficient studying or research, but I think there exist a great many of my biases and viewpoints in views like Epicureanism and humanism, but ultimately, for me, they fall flat as they provide a lot of unnecessary restrictions that I find difficult to place myself into. And they also hold outliers of the doctrines that I find to be I just can't understand them. Ultimately, though, with more studying and much more internal reflection, I hope to come to solid ground with my view and what exactly I believe to be true and how I find knowledge. Thank you.